Hello, everyone. This is Doug Campbell-John, founder and CEO of Coffee. And on this week of Revenue Renegades, I'm very excited to welcome Andy Mowat. Andy is a multiple-time CEO, multiple-time head of RevOps and ops functions for unicorn companies, active investor, opinionated guy, all around good dude. And so I'm very excited for this conversation. Welcome, Andy.
Oh, thanks, Doug. I've loved our chats for many years.
So I want to kick things off. I, as a founder, love hearing founding stories. And you just recently announced that you were leaving Carta and starting a new thing, Whispered. So tell us a little bit about the founding story behind that.
Yeah, I think I wrote a fun article on it too, but it's my 4 times in my life I've popped my head up to kind of figure out the next step and been scared, been intimidated. And so for me, I recognize, even though I've got maybe a objectively good background, like the career story is always bumpy and it's really scary, right? Like you pop your head up after working somewhere for 4 years and you don't know which companies are hot anymore. All the recruiters that you were friends with have moved on. All the talent partners have changed. You don't know how the game is played, right? And then also the reality is all the jobs are unposted. And
Yeah.
so Whispered's philosophy is your next role, senior role, won't be posted. It'll be whispered. And so about 2 years ago, I started asking all my friends, I was like, hey, what do you do with that little spreadsheet that you build when you talk to all those companies? And everyone's like, I don't know. And I'm like, cool, can you give it to me? So for the last 2 years, people have been giving it to me. And just on the side, I've been building it out. And then I figured out how to get recruiters and talent partners and companies to really trust us with the roles, which is if you give us a role, we're not just going to turn it around in the marketplace and sell it. We have built a complete platform to help execs at those scary moments in their career. I'm sure you probably had one. I've had a couple. And especially if you're a founder and then you wrap something up, then you got to be like, man, like I know I'm good, but my background doesn't tell the story. And, Carta was neat. It was a really great run.
Yep.
They actually hire a bunch of former founders and I had a fun time, but my heart was in Whisper.
That sounds great. Well, I'm very excited for, as a fellow entrepreneur, I'm very excited for your launch and to watch you go down this route. I want to spend a bunch of time today just kind of talking about, obviously digging into kind of the intersection of sales, RevOps, and AI. Obviously, at a super high profile company, Carta, and you've been at places like Culture Amp and Box and Upwork and had amazing roles and runs there as well. But in this last year, I assume you had hundreds of vendors knocking on your door trying to get in. I think the first question is like when you walked into Carta, how did you kind of assess the situation and figure out what the priority should be?
First, I think there's org structure. So the COO was incredibly thoughtful about the org structure. Like for the month before I joined, he had 2 people in HR working with him to think through the org, right? So my org was pieced together from 9 different orgs.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was the first part of like, you've got to be successful in the org. And I think I could see that in Tom, the COO. He was just, I could sense that he got the power of my role. Then I focus on like, who are the people that you have leading the different functions, right? And so I'm a big fan, and I had this beat into me at Box, which was like, what is director level? And I remember the COO standing up and be like, this is director level. We are not compromising. We're not going to over promote people. We're not going, but when you make it, you've made it for life. Right. And so I very much believe like directors can define their function, can explain what needs to be done. And so I pinged the folks working for me, whether they were direct or not. And I was like, tell me the problems you have, help me understand them. And I remember one woman, she's like, here's the 3. I don't think you can fix any of them. And I'm like, great. Like those are the problems I'm going to fix. Right. So they were like alignment with the business systems team, things like that. And so I think a lot of what I was early doing was assessing talent and figuring out how to help the company make better decisions, right? Like literally there was 2 tools bought that were sitting on the shelf 9 months after they'd been bought and hadn't been implemented, right? And you're like, okay, clearly broken, right? Like we're wasting money. We're not getting the value out of the tools. And so very quickly, I kind of had like a whole decision process around how do we prioritize across the entire go-to-market. Tom was really helpful in making sure everyone understood like, yes, Andy drives go-to-market tooling decisions. Again, we needed to make sure that the leaders of each of the functions knew that they could bring their problems to us so we could solve them. And we explained to them, listen, like if you bring us a problem, we'll solve it 10 times faster than before, where it would kind of just go into a murky hole. And then I think really, so that was part one. I think we were redoing the marketing org. And so I spent a lot of time there, really working on marketing measurement metrics and flow, but we had a really good MOPS team, but we were turning over from one CMO to the next. And then I spent a lot of time just winning the hearts and the minds of all the stakeholders. And finally, I'd say I had to make one hard call on one of my leaders I knew was not going to, we were at a 3 out of 10 on this function. And I knew we were not going to get to a 10 out of 10. And I didn't believe the person had a strategic vision and could collaborate and could listen. And so I made the hard call to let that person go and backfill that. So that's the mistake I've made a lot of times in my career at bigger places, is you don't make those hard calls on people.
Yeah. It's interesting. In past companies, I realized that you kind of know, you have a good gut sense over time in an interview process. You actually know pretty quickly when somebody comes on board whether you've made a mistake, because no one gets it perfect, right, as well. So one of the things that I've done in the past is every new employee gets a meeting put on their calendar 90 days out, and just says, we're going to sit down and have a conversation to see if it's working for both of us. And for me, that forcing function has been because in every single case where someone has not worked out, I knew within 90 days, right?
I love that. Yeah. So a couple instances, we can have fun here. It's maybe not the go-to-market tools, but it's fun. So first is I have a meeting on my calendar every day with a new hire that works directly for me for the first 3 weeks.
Wow.
By the end of that, by the end of like the fourth meeting, if you've made a good hire, right? Like not even 90 days, but it's fourth. I also give people the speech really early. It's like, when you move to a new town, when you try every new restaurant and you're experimenting, and then you get into a rut. And that rut is about 90 days. And it's like, so whatever relationship we have at 90 days, that's what it is. So it's on you and it's on me to say. So even if they're a keeper, there still may be things in your style and their style that aren't right. And so I'm very clear with people, like, speak up now, because otherwise this is how I'm interacting with you.
Yep.
And so, I deeply believe that. We had one where we just made, one of my leaders, I was like, I'm not sure that I would make this hire. The person was like, I think I want to give it a chance. I was like, cool, great. And it's 60 days wasn't working out. So I was like, make the hard call. And this person did. And so, I think it's actually a favor to the employee too, right? Because if you have a 6-month experience, you got to explain it. But if you have 2,
yeah,
it's like, cool, that it was a do-over. It was a mulligan, right? It just didn't work. Yeah.
Take it off your resume, whatever makes sense. Yeah.
And people should. I with Whisper, we counsel people. It's like, it's okay to remove the 2-month experience from the resume, right?
Yeah. So talk. People is always first. I absolutely agree with that, and I love your daily meeting kind of approach. Tell me a little bit about how you went in and evaluated kind of the needs of the organization in terms of your internal constituents, and then how you evaluated kind of what's the stack and the tool set that you had, and kind of how did you align those things?
It's a lot of pattern recognition, right? Like if you've done it 3 or 4 times before, it's not like I can give some. It's like if you've seen it, you kind of know. So I think it was without going into specifics of what was broken, I'd say it was very obvious, like where there were easy, quick wins in the marketing side, and the marketing leadership was turning over. So I was kind of helping. I actually picked up a couple of the teams just to temporarily run until the new CMO came in. And so like marketing, I'd run before at Culture Amp, and that had a lot of pattern recognition there. I think you're assessing the quality of each of the leaders that are your peers. And I think, sales had really good leadership, but was lacking on the enablement side. So I was able to very quickly pick up on that. And just, I leaned in heavily on that side. I'd say the system side they didn't have a bad stack. They had a really thoughtful GTM systems team leader that was making good general decisions. They weren't pushing the bounds, right? So I think where I really leaned in was on the data side. The data was just, we were spending $1 million a year on data, but between like PitchBook and Preqin and Zoom Info and all this stuff, but we didn't have the type of targeting that we needed. So I kind of leaned in there it was interesting because they've been making decisions. They've been making people decisions and software decisions separately. And so I was like, so basically they were doing like tons of manual work when they could have just spent a little bit more money on software. So I spent time with the SOPs guy that was there, and I think I realized that he was kind of stuck because everyone was like, no, you can't spend any more money in the software system, but he's like, but it can't do this thing. So I helped him kind of like unbottle that and then bang on some of the vendors a little bit on the data side.
What do you think, and this obviously Carta is a later stage company, but and you've been involved in, kind of all phases of this stuff. What do you think are kind of some of the key things for, marketing and sales leaders to focus on in terms of metrics, as opposed to things that are just, vanity or distractions that they should stay away from?
I mean, understand the funnel. Pipeline coverage is a great one. That Carta was 400 million plus. Didn't understand what pipeline coverage was, right? So like that was one I brought in really early. I'm like, I wrote the article. I'm like, hey, I taught the team. I'm like, here's how we do it. And it was fun, right? Like Culture Amp, it took us 9 months to build that, right? Because you have to build the modern data stack. Carta had the team to do it. It took them 3 months to do it, but and then we had to educate people and teach people on that. I'd say I don't really. I mean, they're vanity top of funnel metrics. But I kind of like some of them, right? Like I love web visitors because it's a precursor to everyone's like, web visitors like focus on like opportunities. But I'm like, okay, but if the web visitors isn't going up, so I actually added that one into the weekly deck, right? Which is like I want people to be looking at the fact that our traffic is fairly consistent, and so like it's going to be really hard to increase opportunities like this if traffic isn't have a similar slope. So I don't think there are a lot of vanity metrics. I'm a big fan of like how metrics work together, right? So it's like, cool, we need more wins. Okay, well, there's 4 things. It can be at bats, it can be win rate, it can be boom, boom, boom. And so how do those things roll up? Okay, which one are we short on? Okay, we're short on that one. Pete K at Modern Sales Pros has that great like diagram of like how all the sales metrics roll up together. So I think it's like, that's a common thing. You asked like, what else did I do at Carter? Like Tom, but bless his soul, he had the same thought I did. He's like, we need a weekly metrics cadence. I was like, great. Like that is exactly one of the things that like my team will build. And so I guided them on like what it was, but the team was incredibly capable about building it. And I think it's also like getting consistent on what you look at is critically important, right? Like I'm helping today a company, it's like 150 million ARR just on the side with a friend. And I was like, cool, show me your weekly deck. And they're like, oh, we don't have one. It's always kind of like ad hoc for the board. And I'm like, okay, that might be a problem.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like get the weekly deck and then like make sure your stakeholders have data fluency.
Got it. Obviously, there's a lot of change happening right now in the go-to-market world.
Yeah.
A lot of new players, a lot of consolidation. What do you think are some of the trends that you believe in, and what do you think is, kind of overblown?
I'm done talking to AI agent companies.
AI, SDRs.
It's just like, I think most people, you put a gun to their head, couldn't actually define what an agent is.
Yeah.
Maybe they can now because they've had the gun put to their head enough times. But like, I'd say probably if you looked at it, like 2/3 of these companies aren't really agents, right? It's kind of like when everyone's like, I'm an AI company, you're like, no, you're not. And so I think there's a lot of bolt on. The way I look at it is, I was talking to somebody about this at dinner the other night. There is some innovative stuff happening, but if you wait 3 months, the big vendors have it too, right? Like, momentum is really cool to be able to map words said on your calls to that, but like all the big vendors are adding that stuff, and it may not be 100% quality, but it's like 80% quality. And so I think a lot of what I had to do was train objectively, these are all companies that are building things that was not possible 3 years ago and is really cool, right? So as a RevOps person, you've got these sales leaders and these marketing leaders and these CS leaders out demoing these things, and they're like, oh my God, I need this thing. And I'm like, okay, what problem does it solve? And they're like, I don't know, but it's so cool. And you're like, okay. So, of course I'm going to be wowed on most of these demos. I talk to probably 4 to 5 founders a week on this stuff. And I generally give them some speech of, you're all building basically the same thing, right? Like you're using the same data sets. You're using the Gong data set, you're using go-to-market data, and you're using AI to combine those two together to drive insights. Like, yes, you're building something that feels really cool. But man, is it going to be hard to sell. And so like, I just have tuned 90% of this stuff out now.
What's the stuff that made it through?
I think there's some really cool use cases in enablement that aren't that many companies on it, right? Like the ability to I mean, you want reps to practice. The more they practice, the better they are. So I've seen companies like an Avara doing like really cool video pitches to an avatar that's asking you real questions. Obviously, like Glean and Docket are doing really cool stuff on like knowledge. The concept of a battle card, the battle card for if you're sitting at Carta, like we're selling six, maybe even seven figure deals. We're also selling 6K like cap tables, right? Like the battle card's going to be different depending upon which company you're selling to and who you're selling to, right? So it's not like here's our battle card, have fun. It's more like, cool, I am selling to a CFO versus like I'm selling to the CEO who's brand new versus like a CFO of a very established company. And those are going to be very different battle cards with different levels of detail. Like the CEO of a young company probably won't care as much about security and thing. I mean, maybe they're going for SOC 2, so maybe they will, but it's like all of that stuff could customize the battle card that you present, right?
So I want to pressure test on something you said earlier. The big guys will just have it. We'll just wait.
In most cases, yeah. In some cases, we go a little deeper, right? Like we brought Clay in. We're exploring another cool company at Carta as well too, and so yeah.
Yeah. So there's exceptions, but I think that like there's an interesting question about, you know, what does that gap look like? So obviously there's been a number of companies over the last decade plus, whether it's Clary or Outreach or Gong or now Clay is, and a number of folks that have kind of found this gap where it seems like, the big guys don't have it yet or haven't done something to a level that's kind of sufficient for folks, right? So where do you think, like when you're looking at that stuff, when do you're like, hey, there's an advantage for me to go adopt this now versus wait, if that gap is going to be a year, is it not worth it? If it's 5 years, is it worth it? Like, what's your
Without revealing too much of like other companies or of Carta's stuff, right? Like, so I'll use Clay as an example. We actually were buying Clay and we knew two of our friends at different companies were also buying it, right? Like Carta is more mature company. There's one company that is one of these really, really hot unicorns that may make an LLM model that is really cool. And, they were also buying it. And we were on ZoomInfo, they were on ZoomInfo, and, their fill rate, they were able to take from like 70 to 95%. But like there's risks, right? Like
yeah.
it's really complicated. The costs are harder to control. And I said to them, I was like, hey, we're going to take our time. We're really going to do this. He's like, I don't care. Like we need to move faster, right? Because we're growing at like 140% a year. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Like but when you're you're making the right decision. Every go-to-market decision is based upon like the company dynamics, right? And so I wasn't going to, pitch book data is really important to Carta. How do you use it? It's like, and so you're not just going to like nuclearize it. Whereas if you're a very giant company that's growing really fast, like you may be a little bit more aggressive on some of that stuff.
Got it.
You also have like bigger, and I mean, enterprise security is tough. I remember posting one sometime. I had this fun post that went viral. I was like, if you're trying to offer me a free POC, you don't understand enterprise, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's like the number of sales reps that would be like, hey man, I think it's cool. You think it's cool. Like, why don't you just take a free POC and play with it? I'm like, that don't fly at 400 plus million in ARR. It totally flies at like 5. I was plugging in all sorts of stuff at Culture Amp in the first year until we started to mature. And I love that stuff and I geek out on it. And yeah, it probably could help on the margin, but like, and probably you want my speaking about your product and you almost give it to me for free, but that's not corporate. I mean, we are dealing with people's sensitive financial data. We are not going to break that barrier.
Yeah, especially in industries like financial services and healthcare, you just can't take those risks. It's interesting the number of companies that, in my background, I did a couple security companies, and so I've always had a kind of security first posture. And so, like when we started Coffee, it was like we're just going to go do a SOC 2. Let's just start this process now. Like
I think everyone's doing SOC 2s right off the bat, right? Like Vanta and Drata are just. It's like, you probably should like. It's like at 4 or 5 people, you just do it. It's a cost of doing business. It's it's going to cost you 50 grand and stuff. But if you get it done early, I mean, I remember Culture Amp, it took us like 3 or 4 years to go get SOC 2, right? Because it was like just the amount of like processes that you have to look at, review, and fix. So yeah, I think most startups now just do it. It's funny, like we did it at Gated, and then we showed our auditor what we built for tracking, and they're like, "Oh, you don't need Vanta anymore." Right? Like I was like, yeah, I know. Like it's like we just built a massive process in an Airtable that like tracked everything, and they're like, oh yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I think and I just think it's good practices. There's a bit of a overkill at times on some of that stuff, and but I think it's just it's a tax that you have to go take a big gulp and assume. And I do think my feeling on it is it just if you do it early when you're this 5-10 person company, you just set the pace for all the stuff going forward, and it's much easier than if you suddenly wake up at 50 or 100 and say now we're going to start it.
Everybody, I mean, people should get it. It's kind of yeah, it's table stakes nowadays.
Yep. So how do you, when you look forward to how AI is going to, we talked about how AI is not going to impact, in AI SDRs, let's say in the short term, that may change in the future, but where do you think it actually has an opportunity to be disruptive in the
Oh, it's
go-to-market?
going to change everything. I mean, it's I've been studying it. I've been talking to a ton of companies that are using innovative things. I'm listening to a ton of podcasts now. Like, I think the entire B2B tech stack will be rebuilt, right? It's kind of like it was web, then it was mobile,
Hmm.
then it was I mean, and now I think you're going to see this whole wave of things. It's like these apps are so clunky, right? Like Salesforce is just, it's clunky as hell. I remember 3 years ago, I went in to see a friend at a $300 million ARR company. He's like, can you come take a look at my stuff? And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, this is painful. Like I wouldn't want to be you, right? Like you can't add any more objects. You're capped out on fields. The user experience is just mediocre because like you're like, oh, we can't do this because it's on another object and you can't map it over and you can't opt in. I mean, it's an irony, right? Like I invested in Scratchpad and I love what those guys are doing. But it's interesting, like you bring to me a better UI, and as a RevOps person, I'm like, well, you kind of have one. Like it's like I'm trying to solve problems that aren't solved, and it's kind of like I get that your UX isn't perfect. Like I get that it could be better, but it's not going to hit my top 10 because you do have a UX you can log into. And
Right.
so, but I envision this world under which like you can build the right UX for every function. The AI can serve it up. What should you do and where should you take action on it? And can take more and more and more action. We are going to automate a ton of people out of existence, whether people believe it or not, right? Like I Whispered is a one-person company. I have some people helping. I have a developer and a designer and a marketer and some data people all on contract, but like I don't have any other people. I'm using a ton of AI and like to every single exec that comes in, like we go out and AI researches them, evaluates them, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think, and listen, what somebody told me is don't build for where the models are today. Build for where they'll be. Just assume they're going to get cheaper, and uh, kind of follow Moore's law. Almost like every 12 to 18 months, you're going to have this order of
Yeah.
magnitude improvement in what they
I've
do.
heard so many CEOs that I've talked to say like, I'm not worried about my gross margins when it comes to like compute and AI costs because I know that that's going to get to zero pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah, and I think so much of uh, I guess, what are your thoughts on kind of this? I think Microsoft did a brilliant branding job when they first launched this in terms of Copilot, because I think it was a very safe, like, this is not taking your job away. This is not flying the plane. This is somebody who's helping you in your task. But as you point out, I think some things will be full autopilot mode, and some things will remain Copilot for a long period of time. What do you think are the things that are kind of most likely to get automated out versus just be your kind of chief of staff kind of Copilot?
I think the Tesla Waymo example is one I've written a lot about, right? Like
Mm.
Waymo early on realized to go from level 1 to level 5 self-driving, they couldn't do it because like the person in the car will get distracted and then they won't take the wheel. And so they just ripped the driver out of the car completely. And they learned at a lot faster rate than Tesla did, right? I think
Yeah.
Tesla's collecting a lot of data, but they're not doing it. I've watched this before, right? So many times people are like, your ops team's amazing. Like I have all these things where I just push the button and do it, right? And so like in theory, I want to have, I mean, if I talk to people, I'm like, yes, I want my SDRs to review the emails before they get sent. But if I serve you up a well-written email, you're not going to read it. You're just going to push the button. And so I think that to me, like what's going to come first? I don't know. It's like, I think support is going to, I mean, I've just had so many great AI support experiences recently with things. I don't really want to talk to people. And every time I talk to a bot that I'm impressed with, I always ask it, like, what do you run? What are you powered by? So I'm always studying those. And ironically, like the best ones I've had experience with recently, just from a small data points, are like Zendesk, right? Like Zendesk is figuring this stuff out.
Yeah.
So support will get completely, tier one and tier two will all basically collapse into one.
Yep.
CS, I think you're going to see everyone should have a tech touch motion. And then you're still going to want, like, for 100K plus type deals, something else. But like in theory, you should be able to nurture and coach and all that. At Box, like 10 years ago, we did a pretty amazing thing. We had 90,000 customers that we ran with Gainsight, where we basically were using product data to trigger notes to those people. They were our smallest 90,000 customers. I was actually one of them before I joined Box, and I was so excited to meet my AM, and they were like, yeah, that person doesn't exist. And so like, but I thought they existed. The woman seemed nice. She
Yeah.
was really persistent, right? Like, and so no, she didn't exist. And I was feeling guilty because I hadn't upgraded and all this stuff. And so I think a lot of that lower, like below a certain ACV, you're going to see everything automated. Inbound, fully automated. Outbound, I believe in the personal touch. I think that's a really interesting one that obviously I've spent a lot of time on, but I don't know. Outbound's going to take, actually, outbound, ironically, there's all these companies trying to scale a SDR outbound. I have most of the numbers for their net retention in Whispered because people have whispered it to me. And I know the retention numbers on almost all these AI SDR companies, and they ain't good.
Yeah.
And so like people are trying it, but they're churning off of it very quickly. And so I talked to somebody last night. They were like, "Oh, yeah, I tried this one and turned off of it. Now I'm trying another one." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Let me know how that one goes." And so I think some of this stuff, it's really hard, right? Like, so there's that. What else? Marketing. Boy, there's a lot of areas where marketing can get AI. I mean, content creation, video creation, all that. So there's just, and then and enablement will totally change, right? Like equipping reps. So yeah, it's like, and that's the next 3 to 5 years. I think if you think out like 10 or 15, it gets really
Different.
very different.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we had my first guest on the show was Yako from Winning by Design, and one of the things we talked about was, if your process isn't great for outbound, it doesn't matter if you bring in an AI SDR and put it on autopilot. You're just basically having a bigger spam cannon version of something that doesn't already work. And I think that's what I've seen a lot with those things. I'm a huge fan of Intercom on the customer support side, and we use them in coffee. And I know that I had Adam Robinson on the show as well, and I think for our B2B, he was sharing stats about they're getting close to 3,000 support calls a week, handling something like 95% of them, through the AI built into the Fin AI built into Intercom. High NPS scores, one person managing, customer support for their entire organization.
I just 2 weeks ago cloned myself, right? Like because I write a lot and I speak a lot on podcasts, I was able to take all of my writing, every conversation I've ever recorded, and like some other stuff, and dump it in. And now like people are like, Andy, can we talk about my career? I'm like, great, talk to my clone, right?
Yeah.
And my clone it's still getting there. The company has promise, but the company that built the bot, but there's ways that you could see how it could just pull people through a funnel, qualify people out, all of that stuff, right?
Who built the bot for you?
It's Delphi.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. I've seen a lot of people do that kind of virtual version. I think Brian Halligan might have used that.
Yeah, Halligan's used it. Lenny's used it. A bunch of other people. I think a lot of people have tried it. I'm going really deep on it, right? Like it's the front and center of our website. Like you want to talk to me about your career, like go chat for the bot for free. I've already seen the first in like the first week people have already paid for it. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
That's cool. Yeah, the other one is, Yako was talking about Amanda's company, One Mind, and she's going to be on the show in terms of inbound stuff, right? And basically having a virtual Yako they call Jack, who you can ask him about his Red Bull consumption habits and kind of what are their services and stuff like that. And I think there's an interesting trend of stuff that's going to happen there. Of how do you basically how do you take as much of this process and allow people to self-serve in a scalable way before they have to go talk to humans?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I still think it's like, we're still at like the horse and buggy, right? Instead of the walking, we're at the horse and buggy. I think it's like we don't know where roads are going to be built or how things are going to be done. Like, I think it's gonna change everything. I do think most of the money that's been thrown at companies on this first wave will be kind of like the pets.com web van era for sure.
I know we've had a conversation before about, kind of the difficulty of off ramps from things like Salesforce and HubSpot and these CRMs when you're down so far down a path of these systems of record. So how do you kind of think about when you've got, deep investments, lots of architecture pieces that are tied to each other, kind of that transition given all of this innovation you're talking about coming?
So I actually don't think it's the deep investment in the tech itself. I actually think it's more on the integration side, which I'll talk to in about a second. You can read your entire Salesforce architectural schema. You can export all the data. You throw a PS firm on there, you could move it somewhere else. I think it's more all the integrations. That's why I love and invested in Ampersand.
Mhm.
I don't know if I think you've met
Oh, very
Ion.
familiar.
Yeah,
Yep.
you got to get Ion on your show. But like those guys are revolutionizing what GTM integrations are all about, right? Like everyone shows up and they say, "Hey, cool, Andy, you're going to buy my tool. I've got it." And I'm like, "How great's your Salesforce integration?" And everyone's like, "It's awesome," right? And it never is. Right? They're like, "I'm putting in 4 objects into your Salesforce," or I've got. I mean, literally, I went through this with 3 vendors in the last 6 months. Like, I get full read access. I'm like, "No, you don't." Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Well, no, that's the only option. Take it or leave it." And so I'm like, "No, well, with Ampersand, I could tell you I want this, and then you could dial it in and give me a custom integration, right?" So if folks are out there listening and they're building GTM tech, like they should be talking to Ampersand.
Yeah, no, we're big fans of what they're doing, and I think they're taking the right approach. In the past, you've had these kind of, kind of too lightweight to be useful Zapier style and things that just
Yep.
don't work for that kind of stuff. But I do think there's the nice thing about again building in this era is not only is so much stuff between open source between partners like Ampersand and others that kind of put those pieces together. The whole cycle of building sophisticated SaaS apps becomes much faster.
Yeah, I don't know if you've talked to them recently, but I just got a peek at their new release, the webhooks for Salesforce, which
Yeah,
is
I talked about that.
that will Zapier is like read or write, you query it and it goes and does it, but the ability to be like a change happened in your CRM, I want to know about it,
Yep.
is game changing.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Hugely powerful. Hugely powerful. Yep. Well, this has been a great conversation, Andy. I have a few things just kind of wrapping up in terms of what we talked about. So when you think about kind of the things that AI is going to touch, we talked about everything kind of being there. What is if you could have AI automate one thing in your life, it doesn't have to be business wise. What would you love AI to go automate for you?
I want, if I'm thinking about it like in the Carta sense or in a GTM sense rather than in the whispered sense, I'd say I want it to automate my TAM fully. Like I want to know. So there's the kind of the basic easy stuff, right? Like how big is it? How many employees? What industry? But like smart people today are going out and sending bots to scrape that stuff, right? Like Carta, like how far up the food chain can I get to when a company is founding themselves? Because that's when they decide about a cap table, right? Like if you're selling SOC 2, like you should be able to go out and people are doing this because I know I've talked to them, go out and scrape every single company in your TAM's website and understand, do they have a SOC 2? Who's providing it? And like what other services do they have? And so that stuff's been, now that's all possible, right? Like the ability to really, and I think that's custom for every company, right? Like it's not Zoom info thing. It's the bots that are going out there and doing that. But here's the thing: it's really fucking complicated to set up, and there's some companies that are making it easier to do that I'm kind of talking to and learning about and understanding that literally can make that a push button experience to be able to fully understand your TAM.
Are you referring to Clay in that, or other companies beyond Clay? Because obviously Clay is doing, when you talk about doing a lot of scraping, a lot of automation, that's a bit of their bread and butter.
Yes, and
Okay.
we'll talk more.
All right. Sounds good. Let's just get personal for a minute. What's something you're passionate about that might surprise people?
Well, I think most people know I'm passionate about Keanu. That is not as big of a thing as it's become, but it's I think you lean into these things out there. But the guy's a good dude. He does good stuff, and
Yeah.
I bought Keanu.actor, and so I have the domain. I love helping people in their careers. I've been doing it my whole career, and so I think up until a week ago, most people wouldn't have known that, but now they do with Whisper.
That's awesome. And just speaking of kind of personal routines, what's one thing you can't live without in your daily routine?
I take a walk every day. I didn't when I was, like over the last 6 months at Carta, I've started doing it, and it's just been nice to take a walk. I was not a podcast guy, and now I am. So if people listen to good podcasts like this one here, hopefully makes the list. But I'm learning a lot from going on ones where people are talking really candidly.
It's funny. I had an investor who had invested both in Twitter and Square, and he had a session with Jack, and he was like, "How do you run two companies at the same time?" And he goes, "I get 8 hours of sleep. I exercise every day. I meditate every day." He's like, "Well, okay, so how do you do that?" And it was very much about, I put my devices aside, right, at 9 or 10 p.m. I go to bed. I wake up. I power walk. You can basically see him on the Embarcadero in San Francisco with podcasts in, take a shower, and then I'm at work, right? So by the time I've gotten to work, I've gotten a full night's sleep. I meditated in the morning. I've gotten exercise. I've learned something. So even if I'm about to experience the crappiest day in the world at work, I've already, kind of checked those things off the list. And I love that.
That's really cool. I've also found that I used to curse, when I was founding Gated, I used to curse LinkedIn's messages because everyone was overloaded. But now with the little other box where you can put people that are irrelevant, and then the little voice notes are insane. So I no longer type them, and they're like little whispers, right? So it's very much on brand. But most times, if people message me, they'll hear back from me almost instantaneously if they're not in my other box, which is I'll send them back a voice note, right? So I can take a walk and knock off 20 voice notes on LinkedIn really, really quickly. So I'm no longer tied to my desk for that.
That's a great hack. Thank you for sharing that. And finally, how can people help you? How can they find you and can connect with you and kind of help you in your mission?
Whispered.com. We are working to change how information gets shared for job searches, right? So if people have confidential information on companies, come whisper it. You'll get credits so you can cash it in for other stuff. If people know about an unposted role, literally go to the top of our website, say start whispering about a role. You can put it right in there. Share Whispered with your favorite talent partner, investor, recruiter. We collaborate with a ton of them already. And if you're looking for your next career, just go to Whispered. Try not to send me a blank LinkedIn invite. I probably won't accept it. I get a lot of them now that everyone knows I got a lot of jobs. Then I've got my link tree on top of my LinkedIn where people can see all the ways they can collaborate with me.
That's awesome. Andy, as always, really fun chatting with you. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thanks, Doug.